So I took maybe a unique path. Like I said, I got in a lot of trouble. I didn't finish school. I'm very open about this. It's not a secret. I got in a bunch of trouble. I ended up getting my GED, good enough diploma. And then I had a desire to move up, but it really never happened until I got married. My wife, when we got married, had a bachelor's degree and kind of pushed me in that direction.
Welcome to the Canary Report, the podcast where risk leaders, safety professionals, and operational executives come for real-world stories and smarter strategies to keep people safe. I'm your host, Michael Zell. In each episode, I sit down with exceptional leaders who are transforming how risk and safety are managed. Whether you're a leader of a nationwide EH&S program in a high-risk industry, or you champion workplace safety across 200 retail locations, this podcast is for you. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Canary Report, podcast where risk leaders, safety professionals, and operating executives come for real-world stories and smarter strategies to keep people safe. I am your host, Michael Zhao, founder and CEO of Yellowbird. Today, joining me is Derek Cox, the safety director of Mann Mechanical Company, Inc. Derek is an amazing human being. I am excited about today's conversation. He and I had a great pre-call. We've had I think this is going to be a fun discussion of two believers in human beings first, kind of a mindset, which I love. Giving you a little bit of background and kicking off his introduction, Mann Mechanical is a leading mechanical contracting firm in the southeast of the United States. Derek's career spans 2 decades, which is hard to believe because he looks much younger than I am, in construction safety. He's got extensive experience in managing HVAC, plumbing, process piping, and a variety of other projects from hospitals to office buildings and mission-critical facilities. He has the wonderful opportunity to see the creations that his company is involved in on a daily basis often, and that's a real pleasure for him. And I will say that he is a no-nonsense safety kind of a guy. He's a believer in being technology first, human first, but also listening to the feedback that he gets. And that as a person is an amazing way of describing somebody. And with that, I am going to say, welcome. Hello, Derek.
Thank you, Michael.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So I guess the first thing I want to kick off with after that long and maybe long-winded intro is I want to first start what we always do, which is about the human behind the business person that we know on LinkedIn and in all the wonderful things that you do. Tell us about your family and your life at home right now, where you are, where you reside, and maybe a little bit about what you do in your free time, what you do for fun.
So I live in Atlanta, Georgia, actually just west of Atlanta, about 60 miles. So I commute quite a ways to work every day. Got a wife. We're coming up next month will be 22 years. Somehow she has stuck it out with me.
Awesome.
And I got 2 great kids. A daughter, Addison, she's 13. And my son, Austin, is 9. So both great kids, do really well in school. Really proud of them. So, yeah.
That's great. Well, your house is full, 9 and 13. Are they into anything that's fun, that keeps you busy? Any kind of athletics or any kind of hobbies or anything that...
Daughter loves theater. She reads a lot, not super athletic.
Sure.
So I stand about 6 foot tall. She's about 5'10" at 13 years old. She's a tall girl, loves theater, loves acting, singing classes, just loves that. And my son is soccer. Soccer is his thing. He likes to go outside and play. He's more athletic and less of a reader. So,
you know what? And he's 9, right? Is that what you said? 9 years old? Yeah, well, I don't know a lot of 9-year-old boys that are readers quite yet. And, getting them out there, burning off that energy as a young boy is probably the best thing that you could possibly do. And you said that your daughter sings. Obviously, she's, coming into her own with her height, and she's probably uncomfortable around that. I can understand that. I have a lot of friends and family who are quite tall, and it takes time to adjust to that kind of stuff. how's the acting and the singing giving her confidence? And is she is her voice something that is that she wants to pursue, or is this just an area of
I think it's an area of interest. She really enjoys it, and hopefully she builds on it and grows into it. She sings much better than I do, so she can hear tone and pitch, and that's uh, better than my monotone singing voice. Sure.
well, like we all can't be singers, and I am certainly not one of them. Not that I don't try, mostly by myself because nobody else wants to listen to it.
When the
so,
windows rolled up.
and your wife, does she stay home, or is she working, or in a normal career job, or what's her
She's
story?
a school teacher, high school chemistry, biology,
Oh,
sciences. She has a PhD from University of Georgia, so very
wow,
educated, and 20, I think 21 or 22 years into teaching. So she
wow.
loves it, loves the students, loves the area we live in, and teaches there. So it's really good.
That's fantastic, man. I mean, I often say, and we'll talk about this today as we go into the journey of health and safety and just leading horses to water, as the saying goes, that we're all teachers. And I think that in the industry that we serve and the people we serve, those who are really inclined to being a teacher or a coach, um, is are the people who are really most impactful. Uh, does your wife really enjoy, as she always enjoyed, being a teacher and kind of coaching and mentoring, not coaching as in athletics, but just mentoring these young brains, these young minds?
Think she does at the end of the day. Of course, like any career job, when you deal with 100 kids, 100 teenagers a day, you're dealing with kids with problems. High school, it was quite a while ago for me, so there was a lot of drama. So at the end of the day, she loves those kids.
Well, I have a 16-year-old daughter and a wife who's very active in that 16-year-old daughter's life in a wonderful way. She's very successful as a young lady because of my wife's involvement. But yes, there is a lot of emotion that goes through the house when dealing with all of this stuff. It's teenage years for boys and girls, but particularly with girls is challenging. And then now she gets another 100 of them at school. So wow, that's quite a thing. So where did you grow up, and how did you end up in the world of safety, and particularly at Mann?
So I grew up. My dad was military. Grew up on military bases for most of my young childhood. I think we were 12 when we moved off base. Um, a lot of a real culture shift from Department of Defense schools, DoD schools, to Paulding County, Georgia, where it's, I don't know what the population was back then, but it was very rural. One high school, a couple middle schools, so really rural and really different. We lived on about 2,000 acres with six other houses in our neighborhood, quote unquote. So
Wow, that must have been quite an experience. And were you off base, or was that on the base you were on there?
so that was off base. The we didn't own the 2,000 acres, but we lived in just an area with about 2,000 acres and maybe 6 to 8 homes, and not many friends to pick from versus living in basically an apartment community or a condo community on base. Just a real culture shift.
I imagine so. And so from that perspective, did it sounds like a rural, was it a farm kind of environment? And so did you have, livestock and horses and stuff like that? Were you able to go out and do that kind of stuff? Or what were you into as a kid?
I was into a lot of trouble as a kid. That's what I did. That was my hobby. A lot of
Well, like I
trouble.
said, 9-year-old boys need to burn things off. Soccer's a better avenue, but we all have our paths.
Much better than my choices. Yeah,
Yep.
we had a lot of fun, a lot of unique things. Some things you can't do on a military base that you can run through the woods behind your house. You can't do that on a military base.
Right.
and we loved to play war because we grew up military. So we had my dad's gear, and we would, run through the woods and build forts.
Oh yeah.
So
Uh,
not too far off in that sense, but just in the community and the people being around, it was a lot different. The schools were much different. The books I had in seventh grade were the same books we used in fifth grade. So on the DoD basis, the fifth grade, it was that far behind in public school. So
wow. So yeah, this was quite a culture shock. And then, did you end up going to university, or did you, when you went through high school and got out, what was your path like?
maybe a unique path. Like I said, I got in a lot of trouble. I didn't finish school. I'm very open about this. It's not a secret. I got a bunch of trouble. I ended up getting my GED, good enough diploma,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then had a desire to move up, but it really never happened until I got married. My wife, when we got married, had a bachelor's degree and kind of pushed me in that direction. To like, hey, she didn't really say it, but just encouragement of, hey, you better do something better. So, I went to a failed nursing school. I've got a pilot's license and an aviation degree. Um, got and then got into safety. After technical school, I'm a union plumber by trade. So, went to trade school. A lot of different paths there.
I think that is, not only I appreciate that you are speaking about this openly and that you're proud of your background, you should be. It's what makes you who you are. And that journey, even the trouble and even the figuring it all out, that's life. That is the journey of life. And that is what makes you who you are and how you can talk to people and, you know, kind of relate. The fact that you've been a union journeyman plumber, and that you've been, and I did not know you were a pilot. I now did you. So you weren't on 152s, 172s, little Cessnas?
Right, right. I've flown a little bit bigger, but nothing much. A couple of twin engines. When you get in the union hall, you spend 5 years in an apprenticeship, and you turn out, is what they call it, when you get out of school, and you're making good money. Back when I turned out, it was like $20 an hour. That was really good money back then. But they call it the golden handcuffs. I was always looking. It's cold outside. When it's cold, it's cold, and when it's hot, and I was looking to get out of that, so I went through aviation through that route. Finished school right in 2008, so right when the economy went down. And I stayed on that path, doing some flight instruction, and my wife called me one day and said, "Hey, guess what? I'm pregnant." I said, "Well, I guess I better get a real job." So back to the union hall I went.
Okay. And so is man, well, after that, so let's keep on, I'll get to man mechanical in a moment. So where did you go after that? So was that when you started at Man, or did you have another step between?
So a few stints between there and Man, a lot of learning, a lot of personality has completely changed. I used to be really direct and really straightforward. Nobody likes that. Well, I will say a lot of people don't like that. They like you to beat around the bush and pat them on the back and shake their hand. So I learned a little bit throughout my career as a plumber with that. Um, Worked on a job in Atlanta and met this guy named Barry Darnell. I don't think he's in safety anymore, but he kind of steered me through this path. Really great guy, and just kind of steered me into safety. I seen it was an opportunity to grow, to talk to people, to build relationships. So I started down that path. I worked for a large, actually worldwide concrete pump company, and we're good to work for. A lot of learning experiences, and left there and came to Man Mechanical. So
Now, were you in their safety group at that point, when you were, and were you all over the world, part of that safety team? Were you traveling and all that kind of stuff, or were you kind of regional?
So my title was regional safety manager, but it was all over the U.S. I think they've got some offices in England and Ireland, but I just stayed here in the U.S.
So what were before we get on to Mann specifically? So you said that they're a kind of a concrete pumping organization. Is that their primary? So that had to be very interesting in the learning the safety elements around that process, because I've watched that process many, many times. And when you're in this industry, it's kind of like the white car thing. When you buy a white car, you look around and everybody has a white car. And you're in this industry, everything is safety, right? Like you can't look at a construction site or a tree trimmer or a person painting and not think about, if they're following protocols and if they're doing that the best way they could be to keep everybody safe, all that kind of stuff. It's a sickness. I've often thought that that process seemed very challenging to train people well.
It's much more dangerous than people think. It is.
Yeah.
And I won't speak too much about the company, but it's a very dangerous job. A lot, you think about it. You've got a guy that gets up at 1 o'clock in the morning to go to work. He drives to the yard, gets a concrete pump. He drives an hour and a half to the job site. He gets out and they're throwing dunnage out for their outriggers. So there's potential injury. They go from static to moving, a lot of injuries with that. Then they're, walking around on rebar at 2 o'clock in the morning every day. So, and they may pump concrete for 14, 15 hours and then drive that 90,000 pound truck back to the office.
So those bases, so the rebar is crossed and which, by the way, in its own right, the machines that do the rebar, winding, the high pressure, they have themselves a safety regimen that's very important to follow. But then how deep are some of these foundations? Like if they're walking on the rebar filling, and of course they're in their concrete boots that go up to their knees, and but how deep, if they fall through that rebar, how far in down?
Most of the time, most slabs are 4 inches thick, but if you're on an elevated slab, it could be, some of those bond beams or those not bond beams, but the beams are 4 or 5 feet deep. And then you have these mud mat pours that are 5, 6, 7 feet deep. So it's a ways to go, but they don't have to fall far. It's just the, trip and get my leg caught in between some rebar and fall. And it's a twisted ankle, a broken leg.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Now, is there any standard around? And we'll keep going. I'm very you kind of interest point for me. So is there a standard from a industry perspective or OSHA or other regulatory specification for that particular area of construction? Like, do they need to be tied off? If you're on the ground, but technically you're standing on a surface, but you could theoretically go 6 feet into concrete. Hope you don't. Is there a requirement to tie off?
I that's a excellent thought. I never actually thought about that. But I mean, it makes sense because there's a hole bigger than 2 inches, right? Something can fall through there. As far as concrete pumps themselves, there's no OSHA standard for that. They use a ASME standard. I think I don't want to quote the standard. I can't recall it, but it's a ASME standard on concrete pumping, and then there's I think it's the American Concrete Pumping Association, ACPA, and they kind of, I don't want to say regulate, but they're like the industry standard for concrete pumps. Like they'll come up with a training, they come up with a certification.
There's a lot of groups like that. And I find it to be fascinating in this industry. Everybody references OSHA and EPA and MSHA, but there are a lot of standards that we all have adopted that are not technically governmental. Like that. Flagging and flagger training with ATSA. There's a lot of best practices that become almost stated as law that aren't. you know, it's quite interesting, how uh, how industries can adopt. And I think it's a good thing. I mean, because if you don't have a standard, how do you know that you're doing well, right? Like, how do you know if there's no test and no grades? Well, it's funny. That's a whole nother dialogue.
You got the general duty clause too, right? For any recognized hazard. So
Exactly, exactly. That's the all encompassing. Okay, so then run me through Mann and what you all do and just kind of a big picture about the and most people are not familiar. I apologize if that's hopefully that is not insulting to Mann Mechanical. It's we have a pretty big listenership and many are not in the southeast. So tell us about you guys.
so Man Mechanical, we're a small. I don't want to say small. We were a small company, and over the years, of course, have grown. I've been here for almost 3 years. Um, when I signed up, they had a safety manager, but I just want to say he just probably didn't have the experience he needed to run a safety department. We had about 100 people working for us then, so within 3 years now we have about 250, 270, somewhere around there. Seems like it goes up every day.
Oh yeah.
Do a lot of data center work. That's the big thing. Data centers, pharmaceutical, a lot of clean work, hygienic work. We'll do some university work, helps keep us going. We're a woman-owned business, so minority-owned. That keeps us, with opportunity. So we try to diversify, if you will, to keep numbers right, to keep our growth right.
That's awesome. That is fantastic. I think a lot of people have mixed emotions about the programs around women owned or, other disadvantaged communities. I'm a disability owned business. I was born with one hand and I'm a big advocate for the power of disability and the power of difference. And I wish it wasn't necessary, but it is because at the end of the day, giving the opportunity to those who may or may not have an equal advantage or equal opportunity, I think is a wonderful thing. I'm happy to hear that you're proud of being a woman owned business and that it is growing and successfully growing from 100 to 200. That's a great testament of taking a program like that and making it thrive. So that's a really cool thing. It really is. Um, so on the data center, so when you're doing the kind of work that you're doing in data centers specifically, we do a ton of data center work. We place people for durations 12 months, sometimes 9 months, sometimes a week, depending upon at Yellowbird. But data center is a big part of our business. So what aspect of data center build outs are you all doing? You're a subcontractor, I imagine, to the GC. Um, and what are you all doing in that space?
So we do all the chilled water, the barely is there steam. You don't need heat in a data center. There's enough of that, but it's the chilled water piping. So one of the projects we're on right now, we use this pipe called Aquatherm. It's a plastic pipe with a fiberglass center, and it bonds together with heat like a fusion joint. And this goes, they call it liquid to chip. First of all, the pipe doesn't have to be insulated. So that saves cost right there. But it goes directly to the server, and there's some kind of heat exchanger in the server where oil actually goes to the chip, but the liquid, the water we're pumping in there that's chilled will cool the oil and cools the chip. So
Yeah, it really is. I was in the data center business in 1996. I was my first, it was like one of my first jobs. And I spent a lot of time in data centers, raised floor with, pressurized air flow and through the floor ducts going and now you hear about all this other technology and all the data center growth. And I'm actually curious that one of these days, maybe I'll come out and visit you in Atlanta. And you can go and take me to one of these places. I'd love to see today because it's been 30 years. It's been 25 years. So I I imagine it's very different today than it was back then. So
We're actually doing one data center. They're building these temporary deployable structures. So it looks like a chicken house. There's no chilled water in it. It's all evaporative cooling, um, which is just forced air going through there. But and they're in it's a tent. It's literally a tent like a chicken house, and that's where they're building data centers now. Just because it takes so long to build the concrete structure and the permanent infrastructure for it. So
it does make a lot of sense. And the military's been doing it, as you know, in your upbringing for years. And my background after getting out of data center world was in satcom, satellite communications, and there I've supplied internet access and voice and data to many portable data centers. I mean, it's been done for years and years. And as you imagine, the military has done very well at containerizing portable data center infrastructure. And I can understand how that could be really valuable in today's world where the growth is just enormous. So, how many full-time employees? You said you have about 200 now. How many programs are in operation at any given time? How many locations and so forth?
probably 12 to 15 any given time. We've just expanded into North Carolina. So yesterday we opened the office. So we're painting it and getting it all fixed up, but we have the property now. Got a couple of jobs up here. Yeah, about 12 to 15 big job sites. There's some small service work going on continuously, but
Now, and on your from a safety training and surveys and oversight perspective, are you having to travel to all these various locations personally? Are you spending a lot of time on the road, or is it? What does your team look like internally?
so we try to the technology part of this is trying to force our foreman to have control of the safety, right? Like it doesn't matter if I'm there, you should be controlling the safety. Um, so I don't travel a whole lot out of state. We've got two jobs in the Carolinas right now. We're of course look to more, and I'll be traveling more at that point. But um, I do go to the local job sites in Atlanta. My goal is once a month to hit every job site.
You know, it's interesting. My one of the use cases that we've been doing a lot of for construction is doing safety supervisor walks, um, and doing them once a week at every location. And if you think about the practicality of that, for you to do once a week at every location or even have somebody, it's a pain in the keister. And so, but knowing that somebody's going to be keeping an eye and having a Yellowbird professional who knows what your expectations are and going through and even having some things highlighted and being able to see that they're being addressed week over week. I've found that that's a really interesting play because it's difficult, as you say. Your goal is to be on every site. I am sorry, not recalling what you had just said, but spending time once a month at every location or something to that effect. That's a lot of travel and being away from the office and being away from home, and it's kind of a burden on the whole business. So it's a interesting way of contemplating when you're doing these visits. What's your goal? Are you doing trainings or surveys or just meeting folks? Like, what's the?
My goal is a relationship with everybody. There's 270 people. I can't remember everybody's name, but there's certain people that stand out.
Yeah.
I'm looking for, some hazards. I've got some new safety people, some new foremen. So we'll walk through and talk about different hazards and how to address those. Um, so my goal out there really is just to make sure that we're building that culture. It's not really to point out every single thing that's wrong. It's to let them lead a little bit and just observe.
Yeah, I think it's actually a really powerful thing. You bring up an interesting point on the foreman's. It's very difficult to be a foreman for so many reasons. People don't have nearly the respect that they should for how difficult the job is. And you've got a lot of moving parts. You've got a budget to make. You've got a timeline to make. and you also need to make sure everybody comes home safely, and that you're being a steward of your employee while doing all that other stuff. And I I've often found it's so difficult, even if they know that things need to be improve. If they have to be the person that's pointing it out, they've changed the dynamic of their own relationship with their team. It's kind of the same. It's kind of the same with you. Like if you go out and even if you see things, you have to make an active decision. Is it something important enough that I need to point it out right now? Or do I want to build this relationship and note it later? Right. Because you're there all the time. And so, or occasionally, it's such an interesting dynamic that you have to contend with. I think it's probably the reason that you have learned to communicate differently than you did when you as a younger man, maybe a little less direct, because you start to understand they are not going to take that well if I hit them between the eyes.
We all do stuff wrong, right? But people want to hear what they're doing right and they want to be appreciated. So
Absolutely. It's funny. I tell our customers we're doing like 120 locations on monthly surveys for one of our customers. It's actually fire assessments, fire walks, and it's going to turn into 220 monthly. So it's actually a pretty exciting opportunity for us all across the country. And I said, I want you to find 3 to 5 things that you can be proud to reinforce that they're doing well. Put it on the survey and, and highlight it, point it out. This is great. All that stuff, right? Because I think it's an important part of the journey of, you know, if you are you going to be the parent that says, man, you got a 95 on that test. Congratulations. Let's go out for ice cream. Or are you the person that looks at it and says, man, you missed 5 points. What's going on here? Why are you such a loser? It's like, I got 95% right. Come on. Right. And this industry tends to almost be an industry of the 5%. And it's a shame. It really is.
have a couple of clients that they require a number of observations on a job site. They require the foreman do an observation and then their team does observations. Our safety guy does an observation. And I tell our guys that they're to do nothing but positive. These observations I don't care if it's somebody wearing their safety glasses or somebody tied off on a lift, but we're not to turn in negative observations. And it just reinforces the fact that, like you said, there's 95% of the people out there are doing what they're supposed to be doing and are never appreciated. And you've got 5% that are knuckleheads and, and you got to get out there and help them, coach them a little bit.
And even if the statement is, over the period of 30 days, we observed, over 75 of our workers tying off on an MEWP, on a scissor lift, and we only observed 3 that did not and are addressing that. It's the same statement, but you're like, yeah, that means 75 of them did really well, and we're addressing the 3, you know. But I don't think a lot of people have learned how to communicate, and certainly this world is not making it any easier.
A lot of people that I think they look at the safety as the crime and punishment is what I was always told, and that worked 25, 30 years ago. It worked, hey, if you don't do this, I'm going to throw you off the job site. We're dealing with a completely different society now, a completely different culture. It is so different than when I came up, and I try to, all these old cats that work with us. I'm like, hey man, it's not the same. We have to treat people differently. We can't talk to people the same. We can't yell at people. You can't cuss at people. You got to tell people they're doing good. They like to hear that.
And even if they are not doing well, you'll always be able to find something that is going well. Everybody talks about the S sandwich, but the reality is there's a reason why you say something positive, give a little bit of feedback, and end with something positive. I think it's a little disingenuous at times, but I would rather have that than have somebody yelling and screaming, right? I'd rather, focus on doing, one positive for every negative, or 2 positives for every negative. Well, at least you got your mindset somewhere in the right place. So we're from internally. So where is your headquarters? Is it actually Atlanta?
It's in Decatur, which is basically Atlanta. It's right there. So it's right outside the perimeter.
And infrastructure wise, who do you report to? Are you under which organization? I always find it fascinating because safety can go under operations, it can go under administration, it can go straight to the CEO or owner. Like, where are you in this?
I don't feel like I report to anybody. I don't know. Maybe that's odd to say. I'm held accountable. But I see we have an operations manager let me say this. Mann Mechanical wanted to start a safety department because they got some people got hurt. 3 people got hurt really bad. It drove up the recordable rate. These were serious injuries. And they said, we need somebody to come in and help with this, right? We're trying to grow. We're trying to get bigger. And I've got backing from the corner office, from one corner office to the other corner office, and 100% backing. I've got almost no budget. I can do whatever I want within reason. But we're a team. We work together. The labor coordinator, the operations manager, the CEO, the vice president. We work together. The project management. We're a team. We're going to make it safe together.
I think that's fantastic. Well, it's a big testament. I'm very impressed to hear that everybody that you don't know, and that's actually a good thing. I mean, I'm sure there's an org chart, and somewhere on the org chart, you're going to be under, either ops or administration, but you have a place on the org chart. The reality is that whoever you're reporting to sees the value of what you're doing. You're putting in the right actions, and and they're supporting that. And from my perspective, I think that's a wonderful thing. So as we wrap up our chat today, looking ahead, we're going into the holidays. We're going to, everybody's in this whole 2026 mindset of what does the year ahead look like? You say you have no budget. It's funny because when most people say they have no budget, it means they have no money. On your side, you mean that you're not restricted by the framework of a budget, which I thought was really it's a different way of looking at it. It's a good thing. So are you going to be building a larger team internally as you expand? What does everything look like for you?
Growing astronomically. We're thinking third quarter next year, we'll have full-time safety in North Carolina. Right now we have 4 people under me. We're planning on adding some more, and there'll be some flexible space in there. So we're starting a new program called the Safety Champion Program, where it's not necessarily a safety manager, but it's just somebody who, when there's a question about where they can tie off at or what's the proper fall protection, that they go to this person and he or she knows.
I think that's fantastic. Goes without saying, but I will because I'm being self-serving, but obviously we can help you in your expansion as well as development of these programs, or even seeing how they're going. That's what we do. But again, I have no idea if you're even a customer. It doesn't matter to me. I love the fact that you're on the podcast and we're having such a nice conversation. Well, with that, Derek, thank you so much. I've enjoyed this. I hope that this was an enjoyable conversation, and I look forward to having a great future of working and next time on the podcast as well.
Certainly will. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it.
That's it for today's episode of the Canary Report. If this conversation helped you reframe how you think about risk and safety, please do me a favor. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who needs to hear it. We're building a new category of safety and risk leadership, one that's faster and smarter. Leaders who aren't just empowered by tech, but whose wisdom is accelerated by it. To learn more about how Yellowbird's cutting-edge platform is empowering leaders to solve workplace safety and risk challenges faster, smarter, and at scale, visit goyellowbird.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Yellowbird pages to stay up to date. Until next time, lead with clarity, know first, and act fast.